Exploring the unknown, from conspiracies to mysteries. You are entering the conspiracy sector.
Well, welcome everyone to this very special program. I am your host, Aubrey Batchelor. Sailing this amazing ship with me is Chris Jacobs, and you are entering the conspiracy sector. I hope everybody's been good like always since the last episode. I can't believe the 4th is already upon us, so happy Independence Day to everybody out there, my fellow Americans. How you been, Chris?
Doing all right. The ocean air is pretty good out here. The energy's been very wonky lately, though. So it's ever since that Schumann resonance solstice fiasco that happened recently. You know, the Schumann by itself, or I mean, the solstice by itself is usually a very powerful time of year, the summer solstice. On top of that, you have the AI fiasco that the New Agers ate up around the solstice with the Schumann resonance. I would show a picture of it right now, but this thing is vanishing from the internet. This shows that somebody was trying to scam people with that, in my opinion, anyway.
And speaking of AI, what do you think about all these AI programs that people are using to help them do their homework and things of that nature? All these, it seems like AI is just advancing itself at a super rate now. It feels like.
Yeah, these AI programs that help people write and everything, that's actually a path to a collision course with like doom right there. Because if you do something like that, you start to lose the brain cells and lose the ability to think on your own. There was an Outer Limits episode that described this very perfectly years ago, whereas people were relying on AI to like super read things fast and absorb books and do all this other stuff. But when the one person that couldn't use the AI, the character that was in it, his brain was incompatible with it. He was just a normal guy that could read and had an eidetic memory and everything. He found a way to disable it. And everybody was reading on like a less than a first grade level after the AI was disabled. Their brain couldn't decode and encode things correctly, so it slid them backwards evolutionary
Interesting.
wise when they went off it. Hmm.
Another form of dumbing oneself down.
Oh yeah, the dumbing I call this nowadays. We're just this is just huge amount of stupidity right now, and it's like I call it the dumbing. Uh,
Yeah,
so
it's true.
because of the because of that AI field that's out there, you have the 5G radiation, you have all these massive Earth energies that are happening right now, chaotic soup, which is causing a dumbing with people, the mind control that's out there right now.
COVID too. I know COVID changed me. I've had it 3 times, and I just don't feel like I'm the same person that I was before in many ways.
Same here. I
Uh,
had it 2 times. So yeah, it changed. Even though I'm not a proponent of spreading propaganda, people know this about this, but at the same time, when I caught it, yeah, my brain changed
they
after
might
that.
as well add us to the disinformation dozen. I like how they call the disinformation dozen when it should be the informative dozen.
Right, exactly. Usually, if you see something that they're proclaiming as disinformation and misinformation, look in those areas first for truth, because
Hmm.
that's usually the ones they're trying to say is propaganda, when in fact they're the narcissists and gaslighters projecting the propaganda and the narcissist. So that's usually classic narcissist projection when they say, "Oh, you're doing this." No, you are. Sort of
Hmm.
thing. That's how the government operates. Yeah.
Look in the mirror, homeboy, and take a big deep breath because they're the ones that are the causing a lot of the problems within this world.
And people always blame the opposite political party all the time. But no, it's the ones that it's the ones that are shaking the jar of ants essentially. But the analogy is you have red and black ants. You shake the jar up, they start killing each other. They don't understand that somebody outside of that is the one that shook the jar. That's the one you got to look for.
A lot of
Uh,
these evil politicians, they look at themselves in the mirror. Hopefully, they'll scream after what they see.
Oh yeah, we can only hope. They always say some of them are getting desperate and the whole system is collapsing. I don't believe that completely because the people have to notice it more before it collapses. So people
Mhm.
have to awaken to it more. So people always say, "Oh, it'll collapse on its own." It's no, it has to be noticed by people first.
Mm.
It's one of those two walk in my name type of premise where people co-create en masse something else. Like when they had a bunch of people on the White House lawn, all basically being a peaceful, meditative mindset, they noticed the crime level globally dropped by 2 or 3%.
Hmm.
Uh, Globally, when a small group of people on the mall of the not the White House lawn, it was the mall in
Hmm.
D.C. did this, and it was only I was about 10,000 people, I believe, did this. Crime level dropped in DC and globally in different spots. It was a butterfly effect that took place. If everybody did this, then it would go away altogether. And they
Mm-hmm.
unify against the real bad guys, it would go away pretty damn quick. Uh,
Be interesting to, if you could get a huge mass number of people together and do an experimentation like that and see what the results would be. I'd be interested in that. But
yeah, replicated a second time, like with the scientific method. They did it once already, so they if they get a even bigger group and try it again and see what happens. I think it would be a great experiment. Nobody's been willing to do it since.
hmm,
I believe that was back in the '90s when that happened, late '90s when
go
that experiment
figure.
took place. Yeah, and that's when some of the energy started switching over. Was about the mid to late '90s, and you never saw that kind of thing again after that.
That's what I've noticed. Yeah, it's only getting to be further down the other direction, down that way, it seems like.
Yeah,
Going.
we call it the forced entropy of civilization. So
Yeah,
uh,
true.
yeah. Also today, folks, we're going to look at some local reports and legends from both of our respective areas. We figured this was a good show to kick off. We've had our own respective things and crap going on in the background. Haven't been able to put out a conspiracy sector in a little while. So
Oh gosh, he's
yeah.
been being put through the ringer. I've been being put through the ringer, and we come out still sopping wet.
Yeah, it's sopping wet, but we're still on here, folks.
Yeah,
So the
surviving.
show must go on. Yeah.
You're damn
So
right. There can be only one.
there can be only one. Yes. Connor McLeod or Duncan McLeod, depending on what camp you're in, the movies of the series. So yeah.
I'm gonna have to watch that again. I just seen it advertised on one of the streaming programs. I think it was Peacock had Highlander on it.
Uh-huh. Excellent. That actually advertises the whole Draco reptilian thing with the head coming off, and it
Oh,
also goes back to AI because it goes back to the law of one material, the raw material that they talk about the one, and there can be only one. So they showed in Highlander the heads coming off to and releasing the energy that was trapped within. That's the quickening. That goes back to the whole reptilian agenda thing. So I came to find that out.
very interesting. Well, I guess should we get it started off with some of our local haunts and lores and legends
Mhm.
and things of
Yeah,
that
you can go.
nature?
You can go ahead with yours, Albert.
I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna share something from the state capital of Nebraska. They have a lot of activity over the course throughout the years. I know that you can tour the building. I never personally have. I've been inside of it doing business and things of that nature, but I've spoken to people who have toured the building, and I've come across a lot of freaky stories, to be honest with you. One person that I spoke to was a daughter of a coworker of mine, a personal story. And she swears, it's like that elevator thing of like the 13th floor, how they don't have a 13th floor, it skips it. But she swears to God that it was like something out of a movie, of a horror movie. She ended up taking the elevator and it stopped on the 13th floor, and she opened the door and it was like a time, like she traveled back in time, and people were wearing different outfits and it just looked like it was the 1940s. And
Hmm.
she told me about it one time, and obviously you got to take stories from other people with a grain of salt. But the way that she was telling it, she seemed pretty startled. So only she would be the one to live in that experience. But who knows what's going on out there? Little voids of time that you could walk into, and I kind of relate it to the missing 411 phenomenon. These people that might be walking through voids or time warps or things of that nature, that all these hidden things that go bump in the night that might just come out of the blue out of nowhere.
Hmm.
But
Oh yeah, that's actually a common thing. There was a guy in Arizona that said he went into an old ghost town. It was all wrecked and everything. He stepped through a door, and all of a sudden he was in an active saloon, and he had his cell phone out and everything. He said the people turned and looked at him. They saw him with his device in his hand, and they were scared and came after him. He heard a voice in his head saying, "Back up out the door," and he backed up out of the door, and he was out in the wrecked town again. What happens? He traced his exact steps quantumly back through a portal. If he had turned around and walked the other way, he'd have been stuck there. But it was more like retrace your steps back. And that's essentially what happened to him. These quantum doorways and portals are everywhere, and meshings of different time frames, time fractures. Bermuda Triangle, beautiful example of that. It's where we were out in the Bermuda Triangle, on the edge of it, going to the Bahamas on a cruise ship, and I saw a clipper ship in the background, an exact a one from that time frame, and then all of a sudden it phased out, and there was a regular cargo ship there. It kind of mirrored and did this
Hmm.
effect. And what happened was, is it's the fracture moved a little bit so that it covered that time frame and showed the modern one, kind of like that. And
Hmm.
so we saw that. Of course, you never have a damn camera on you. I would have filmed that thing in 2 seconds if I'd had my phone on me. But yeah, that's basically it right there.
It always happens like that, and not to do a 180 on the topic or anything, but I'm picking up on what you're laying down. We've had some strange UFO activity out here, like I was telling you about last week, but I couldn't get a video of it. I tried getting a video of it, but it wouldn't pick up.
Yeah.
It was just strange as could be. It was like meant to be. I had a neighbor that went back to his house. He wasn't gone but 5 minutes. He come back down, and no more than 1 second after he sat down on the patio chair. Whoa, 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 whoa! What is that? What is that? What is that? And here we go. We debated everything from drones to military craft to satellites, but it just it was strange. I don't know. There was like 20 different things, and they were all going orb like lights, and they were all going in different directions. Very pattern like, but different directions. It was just strange. And there was a few that were different than just the white orb traveling. Some of them flashed a little bit, but the majority of them were about the same. There's 22 different ones that we counted that we've seen, but I bet you we missed probably a good 8 to 10 of them.
Yeah,
And
that could be military experimenting with alien craft and stuff like that. They like to do that. They like to have these things out in the open. It's more likely our people messing with hybridized tech and stuff like that.
mm-hmm.
Where the people mistake hybridized tech by people think, oh, the two have been kind of fused together. No, they're incompatible. It's our people taking the physics they've learned from back engineering something and applying it to our own technology is what it is. And aliens help them build it and mesh the physics together. So it's not like they fuse two things, or they're piloting an alien craft that they found and they're trying it out. So like they figured out the physics of it and they're trying it out to see what buttons do. Basically, they're pushing, let's see if this does, let's see if this does. And that happens a lot with these secret groups that are out there. Nebraska is a huge hotspot. I mean, as a whole, around Lincoln, Omaha, a huge Lincoln Air Force Base, Offutt, all that huge hotspot.
It is, and I might dive into one of those stories with our episode today with local lore and hauntings and strange things that go bump in the night. But yeah, the UFO activity has been immense. All of my UFO sightings, I believe, have happened here in Nebraska, all 6 of them. So it's definitely a hotbed of activity out here. Just because, where I grew up in the northern part of the state. There's just, you can see every star in the sky. There's no light pollution, things of that nature, and you see more stuff that way. So that I've been very grateful for. That's been some of my favorite experiences of my life. But we'll dive on into this. This is about the state capitol here in Lincoln, and they've had a lot of activity throughout its history. Kind of gruesome things that have happened, but this is an article by Katie Nelson and Sam Peschick. State Capitol might have its fair share of ghostly visitors. The Nebraska State Capitol building tour guide Gloria Witherspoon stopped a weekly ghost hunt short before it even started. I've never seen anything in all the years that I've been here. If you see a ghost, tell it to come see me. Clearly, Witherspoon is a non-believer of the fabled supernatural beings that have haunted the Capitol building for years. Stories that have been passed down, including the classic falling and plummeting to the ground to certain death scenario, or the timeless case of the haunted library. For many years, Christmas lights were strung up around the dome of the Capitol building as decoration. But who in their right mind would risk a 17-story drop to the ground below? As it turns out, the state found out that the most willing candidates were prisoners who wanted to shorten jail sentences. As an award for putting their lives on the line, the state would recognize the brave inmate and shorten parole for the individual. In 1968, an inmate volunteer supposedly began to panic while stringing up the decorative lights and suffered a heart attack, which triggered a fall from the top of the building. I've heard that, from several different people. Legend has it that the visitors can hear the screams and sobs of the prisoner many years after his death. Another legend that could fit the role of the Capitol building ghost is a man who fell the length of a spiral staircase that scales the entire building. The story plays out as a man in his 50s looked down the staircase. He became dizzy and fell to the floor 12 flights below. There is only one problem. There are no records of such deaths ever taking place in the building. Tour guide and senior UNL history major Jameson Wyatt said. But you know how things get covered up. Hey, let's just hush hush. We don't want this information to bring this place down here.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of stories have been popularized and fabricated over the years, but there were never any deaths that occurred in the building, Wyatt said. However, as far as hunting goes in the building, there is still a glimmer of hope to find spiritual entities in the building for ghost hunters. There is another legend of a spirit that roams the law library in the building. I've heard different stories of a female ghost that only interacts with males in the library, Wyatt said. Rumor is that the ghost will grab your hand to help you find a light switch. I've gone into the library before to see books just laying on the floor after the doors have been closed. And that's very similar to another local lore here in town that we actually did a ghost hunt with, Chris. You remember Shooter's Pool Room Bar and Grill, how the cabinets would always be open and glasses would be strewn about whenever the next morning shift would come in, and
Oh
very
yeah, oh
similar
yeah,
to
that
that.
was nuts. Yeah, I know.
And
Yeah,
that's in the same town, so there's a lot of activity going around in this area. But once again, legends have been disproven, this time by scientific approach, which I disagree with because I've heard several stories from a lot of other people, and some of them have to be true. Some of them may be fabricated, made up, fantasized, you know, just to add extra flair to the building itself. But there's no doubt that it has a very fascinating history, and there has been stuff that have happened there, as
and
with
I
any place.
feel and I feel the Capitol is also linked to military activity too. The reason for this is sometimes they like to cover certain activity that they're doing with allowing ghost stories that shift that kind of shift into the public eye. Not that those didn't happen, but they let those become the dominant to cover a like a false flag type of thing to cover what they're doing. Well, the reason I say this is because I went to the Capitol. This was many years ago, and the I took a gauze meter, one of those normal gauze meters, and went to the floor just below the dome, and
Mhm.
the point to where the public can get to. Nobody's allowed in the dome itself, and or up in the top there. And I took a gauze meter and I stuck it to the wall as far up as I could get to the dome. And it just did this rotating whining, yeah, yeah, yeah. And that
Hmm.
denoted a radar dish of some kind, and also technology like that can draw in paranormal activity quite a bit. Security systems, security cameras, they're known for doing this, radar, all of it. So radio sweeper, of course, ghost box. But what I did was I went all the way to the basement, then the very, very bottom of the Capitol. And I asked the security guard that was down there, I said, is there a separate elevator other than the spiral staircase, to get up there to the dome? Because that was the floor where the spiral staircase was, or part of it. And I said, is there a way to get to the very, very top? And he just looked at me, he goes, civilians are not allowed up there. And I said, what if I don't get off the elevator? And he goes, I said, I know there's another elevator you have to go down to go up. A lot of military operations do stuff like that. Vegas has that too, where you have to go in the Mirage, where you have to go like to another area to get to an elevator to go to the sub basement to go to the Dumbs base that's underneath there. That's why it's
Hmm.
called the Mirage door. It's like Mirage. It just looks like a regular casino. So, but a lot of people don't know that. So it's the strip is one big sitting on one big Dumbs base right there. But
Hmm.
but with this, it's similar where the guy said, okay, I get on the elevator. And he goes, if you step 1 foot or one toe off this elevator, I will have to place you in handcuffs. Uh, and I said, okay. I said, can I stick my head out? Yes, but you cannot physically walk onto it. We went up there, door opens. I stick my head out, and it was like the round dome of a hallway. It was like this. And I could see several office doors that were around. And I said, I'm surmising there's like a radar dish or something up here. This would be a good spot if somebody was trying to detect something. If the military was wanting to use, like the naval ships have the radar that's at the
Hmm.
top of the antenna, and that's what I was picking up with the gauze meter. He said he looked at me. He just kind of looked at me and went, "Don't." He goes, "You're not wrong, but he goes, I wouldn't talk like that anymore." I'm
Hmm.
like, okay. And I said, all right. I said, we're good. We can go back down. And so he goes, oh, he's like, thank God, I'll get in trouble for even doing this. And he goes, I'll have to file a report for just doing this. And I've always felt that it's like this other ghost story that occurred in this. I can't remember the name of the hotel, or I would say this. a couple famous celebrities went to this haunted hotel, this famous haunted hotel. It's not the Stanley. Many people think it's the Stanley I'm talking about. It's not. It's a different one. Whereas this guy wakes up in the middle of the night and he sees this orange orb hovering over him, and
Mm-hmm.
then he gets up in the morning. He goes to the guy at the bar, and he goes, man, some weird stuff was happening in my room. There was this orb, and I was paralyzed, and all this other stuff. And this old man at the bar said, "Oh, that's the suicide room. A girl committed suicide there." Well, that was true. There was a ghost story there, but that was the cover for a group of aliens that were actually abducting people out of there. You see this in neighborhoods and places where aliens will hide, and they'll hide their stuff with actual ghost haunting stories and everything, so they can continue to operate incognito. What happened was this guy went into the ghost story bit, and many people ask, well, why did the aliens get the guy's attention if they didn't want to be seen? And I said they didn't get his attention. He caught them. Uh,
Hmm.
he caught them red-handed because the people's brains are starting to wake up to some of this weird stuff that's happening around. Like I've been to places where I've seen weird stuff. Like in Lincoln, I saw these guys putting these little white pyramids on top of the 5G towers out there, the antennas, and I was told telepathically that I just observed this, and that I was seeing something that was in the background that normally people would forget. And same thing, I went to a dentist, had a green implant pulled out of my tooth one time, and saw this the dental hygienist with a blank look on her face. And I said, well, I asked her if I could keep it. She goes, oh, no, no. I wasn't meant to see this. These were in those little forgotten missing time fragments of like a few minutes that people don't pay attention to. My
Mm-hmm.
brain started to acclimate to where I was seeing the little spaces in between that people miss. So what happened in that hotel is this guy eventually looked for that old man that had told him, and they said no such employee worked there. I'm thinking that was the alien, one of the aliens that did it, that was trying to throw him off, and or a military operative that was trying to throw him off. But not that the ghost stories haven't happened, because there's a plethora of them too. It's just they like these aliens like to use it, and military like to use it for cover. One fun, I shouldn't say funny, but a story that a lot of people, some people in Lincoln know about the Capitol. Uh, Whereas a guy dressed as a pirate climbed up the Capitol building and jumped off the next to the Sauer statue and splattered on the pavement.
Huh.
And I happened to find a recording, and I'll post this as soon as I get as soon as I look through it, of when before I left Lincoln, that the Sage team went through and did a ghost box session around the exterior of the Capitol. And I asked about the pirate guy, and I heard screaming on there, so I remember that. So, but this was a guy. They found out he was on LSD. He climbed in a big pirate costume and jumped off the top, and thought he could fly. But
Flap.
yeah, that was back. I don't know what year that happened. This was not as far back as the Capitol being built. A lot of people think it's Frank Lloyd Wright that built it, but it was a guy named Grosvenor Goodhue that built it or designed it. People think it's a Frank Lloyd Wright building, and he tends to get credit for it, but it wasn't. It was a
Mm-hmm.
guy that came around before Frank Lloyd Wright got started. Yeah,
You
a lot
know,
of
I've
people don't.
heard, I've heard of, speaking of something similar to that, I've heard of parking garages being haunted because people commit suicide off of them. And I've heard, people reporting the deathly screams, a lot of the time, it's that classic, around the anniversary of the person that actually done it, that it's like
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the
a
cyclical pattern
replaying
of when they did it. Yeah, yeah.
of the event. But who knows? I haven't, it'd be interesting to investigate it. To me, it's I think it's a form of kind of disrespect to investigate somebody's suicide like that. It's just kind of a weird location as a parking garage to go investigate, I guess, per se, when you actually want to go to an actual establishment, like a building, or something, it just, I don't know about that, but I have heard about that, talking with people in the area, about these haunted, parking garages. And I'm sure that, Lincoln is no exception to any other place that maybe that would have happened. The
Vegas
Golden Gate
too.
Bridge.
We did that in Vegas. I pulled the ghost box out in the Luxor's parking garage. Now that you brought that up, and there were ghosts that they were the most interactive ghosts I've ever seen on Ghost Box.
Hmm.
Uh, Uh,
Interesting.
some of like one was wanting to actually help us with something, and then you could hear his girlfriend going, "Nope, don't do that." You could hear the whole
Mm-hmm.
interaction between a group of on there, and very distinctive voices, very distinctive, repetitious voices of certain people you could identify as the same person over and over again. It was very, very clear. It was a class B, I would say, for EVPs. B and A, it's up right up in there. Uh,
Hmm.
so so yeah, it's interesting you brought that up because parking garages actually there's a lot of activity there, and the reason people committed suicide at certain intervals is because they're hitting the same cyclical interval pattern that the last person did, and it's quantumly entangling to them or it's empathically transferring to them, and it creates it rubs the wound over and over again at certain patterns. That's why a lot of weird things happen on solstices and equinoxes and cross quarters, because especially Halloween and all that, because of so they're picking up on the last what the last interval was over and over again like that. And that there's a guy that went into this hotel, and he was mimicking what a guy that committed suicide off the balcony did. His wife had to grab him. He almost threw his own grandchild over the balcony too, because that's what the guy did that committed suicide. He threw the child over and he jumped. And each time somebody would stay in that room at the very date the guy did that, the same pattern would happen repeatedly. So at hotels and parking garages, notorious for this. Hospitals even more so. But
Very
yeah, you were right
interesting.
on the money on parking garages. Yeah.
Do you want to dive on into a little story from your area?
Oh yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So
No,
it's
you're
like
all good. No, no, you go ahead. We kind of summed all that up. If you got a little local legend in your area that you want to dive on into,
okay, yeah, this is. Oh, I should probably do the screen share.
I'm ready to have an East Coast jam here.
Okay, oops, I didn't mean to bring that up. Yeah, that's well, the mess my computer is at the moment. So, okay, yeah, Kill
Hmm.
Devil Hills. This is the Outer Banks. This is where the Wright Brothers Monument is right here, and very interesting area from Blackbeard to Paranormal Activity, lights in the ocean, all this other stuff. And many people, and it said, how did Kill Devil Hills get its name? This is actually quite fascinating. There's some like regular historical things, and I'll expand on one of them that's in here. It says there are a few legends about how the town got its unique name. One is that Kill Devil Hills name originated many years ago when sailing ships transporting rum from the tropics to markets in the north would wreck along the Outer Banks coast. Their cargo would wash up on the sand hills, sit until found by the local population who would say that the rum was strong enough to kill the devil. Another story about the town's name comes from a legend involving a local man who, in an attempt to extort money from the devil, entrapped him in a pit at the top of the hill that is now the site of the huge granite pylon honoring Wilbur and Orville Wright. And that's but Kitty Hawk, uh, Kill Devil Hills, and Nag's Head are like right butted up against each other. And I find that interesting. The Kill Devil Hills, that story about him killing the devil. There is another variation of that story, which I find fascinating, where this coincides with behaviors of like Draco reptilian aliens and stuff like this too. Where if you get one of them close to a beach, it weakens them like Superman with kryptonite. They can't be near the salt air. They can't be near the ocean
Hmm.
ions for whatever reason. Some variants of them can't be. I came to find out. They come from volcanic sulfur pits. That's why some demons smell of sulfur a lot because they're from the sulfur pits and everything. So what happened was this guy lures one of them out to the beachhead there in Kill Devil Hills, chops its head off with a shovel, sharpened shovel, and then burns the body. And this
Hmm.
coincides with the ending to Bram Stoker's Dracula, where obviously somebody was telling them how to kill a vampire or kill a reptilian form, because that's where the vampiric virus comes from, is reptilian Orion alien stuff. Well, what happened was in history. What happens there is Harker and Van Helsing lure Dracula to this island, and they proceed to chop his head off and set him on fire. So that was Draco. That's where that came from. So there is a variation to that within that story of Kill Devil Hills. There's several variations of that legend, but the lesser known one is the one where he chops the demon's head off with a shovel, sharpened shovel, and then sets him on fire. So that's obviously Bram Stoker knew a thing or two about taking on reptilians. So it's what I find fascinating. Now, Nag's Head, and they understated this too. Whereas unscrupulous shipwreckers tied lanterns to the necks of the ponies, nags, and marched them along the high dunes to simulate the lights of a boat at anchor.
Hmm.
Uh, the Nag's Head was an evil trick performed by land pirates who found the barrier islands off the coast of North Carolina to be perfect refuge. They would basically then, so the pirates then would steal the booty when it came in. That's one explanation. The paranormal explanation is UFO types that are underwater that would shine the lights on the waters out there in Nag's Head, Killdale Hills, and Kitty Hawk. Now, is there a major military base out this way? The biggest one of the biggest ones in the country. Newport News, Virginia Beach, and the Outer Banks in North Carolina. Absolutely.
Hmm.
There's this big underwater base, and I had some SSP time in that one. I found it as well. And they have abducted people from time to time to go out there. You have the Dam Neck one, which is by Sandbridge, and it's connected to the bigger ones out in Newport News, where you see all branches of military. You see aircraft carriers parked out that way. You see battleships parked out that way. Huge structure with many sublevels. And they train dogs out there. They train soldiers out there. They do underwater submersible activity. They even test USOs. And also, you have a
Hmm.
lot of MER activity in the area with their, like in the movie Aquaman, where they had the underwater submersible types. You have the
Mm-hmm.
Myrmidon, and you have the military in them that clash periodically. A lot of people don't know this, that the humans and the underwater MER clash a lot. And what happened when we were also in Ocracoke Island, that is also a famous spot, Blackbeard, uh, called a haunt, pretty much. We stayed at the Blackbeard Lodge, which I would not recommend that. Their beds have not made it out of the 1980s, but neither has their ending of their decor or their televisions or anything. So nice people. Yeah, they need to get new supplies. But what
Update.
Josh Gates on Expedition Unknown famously stayed there too, and he
Hmm.
had the same look on his face I did when we walked out of there. So it was. That said, Ocracoke Island, when we were out there, middle of the night, we were walking on the beach, and this was about 6 years ago, and we saw. No, normally there would be the bioluminescent plankton around in the
Mm-hmm.
fall that you see on Virginia Beach, and you see that bioluminescent like plankton that comes up that glows blue. But this was not that. We saw literally an underwater explosion, like the report you saw in the movie Aquaman, the DC movie Aquaman. They were talking about explosions underwater,
Mm-hmm.
and it ended up being Atlantean activity in the movie and Mer. But in this, we saw a flaming, like this fireball underwater come up towards the shore and disappear. And we were told by guides and everything at the time that this was an underwater battle that was going on, and we caught the edge of it. And between USOs and military. And what happens is these USOs also go, and the military does too. There's underwater waterways that go through the country and can go from one end of the country to the other just by underground rivers and lakes and ocean areas where these tributaries come in, and they can go from one area to the other. They can have submarines go from one end to the other as well. Our advanced technology accounts for USO activity and also alien, as well as Agarthan network beings that are in the inner Earth, as well as Mer. So, which also qualifies that too. But
Interesting.
that's what's going on there. I mean, this happened to the Nag's Head. That's of course where they got the name. But I found that very interesting. When I found all
Yeah.
these, we saw the lights coming out of the water. We saw a lot of this. We saw these orbs and stuff coming out of the water when we were there one time in Nag's Head. We stayed a night and saw all of this in one of the local hotels. And if you want some really interesting activity, stay a few days and go out in the middle of the night, like maybe midnight, 1, 2 in the morning, and you're gonna 3 in the morning. You're gonna see it at the witching hour. So this isn't one I learned about today when I looked up this. I did not know about the ghosts on Elbow Road here.
Hmm.
And this is a winding road here. This is just in Virginia Beach area. We have not been out here. I'll probably go check it out at some point. Or if
Mm-hmm.
you're in town sometime, we can bring Conspiracy Sector out there. But
That'd be fun.
yeah, For Virginia locals, Elbow Road is a treacherous nightmare, even on clear days. The road is often the main story on the news with reports of deadly car crashes. Talk about repetitious, empathic transference going on. This is what's going on here. Something that has left many ghosts on Elbow Road. So much tragedy has happened in this area, so much that there are people who avoid the road completely if they can. Elbow Road is considered Virginia's most haunted street by some, and for good reasons. In just the first few months of 2012, there were 45 crashes, many with fatalities. This was just 1 year. Imagine if you looked up the tally since crashes started happening on the road, and the accidents are still happening. And I won't go completely into this. I'll read one more, and then this is actually on the website neptuneghosts.com/ the ghosts on Elbow Road. But this is if you do an internet search for accidents on Elbow Road, you come up with shocking results. Report after report of deadly crashes over the years can easily fill a person with utter sadness. The article title states perfectly, and then there's an article here. I didn't go completely into this, but yeah, this is a fairly large
Seems like a
list.
hot spot of activity.
Yeah, this is a major hotspot. You see all of these reports on Elbow Road. And I didn't even, yeah, it's neptuneghosts.com. And it's actually interesting. The reason they call it Neptune is because there's a Neptune statue out in Virginia Beach that was erected in 2005. And they have the Neptune Festival every year on the boardwalk. But so everything is Neptune related out in this area now since that point, given, the myrrh connotation. But yeah, I find it very interesting. If people see the Neptune statue, it has this life about it, or this haunting presence about it too. If people saw it at night, and I've seen it at night too, it has an energy about it that's very resonating for the area it fits. And I hope it never goes away. But it's very eerie, but it's cool at the same time. But I've never been to Elbow Road. I just found about this morning when I was looking up for this show.
I think that'd be a good location.
Yeah, and it's a like basically a wound being rubbed the wrong way over and over again. That's how some of these wounds over history get formed, the imprints, and then people get absorbed some entangle in those imprints. Like in this house where we are, the owner of this house, I'm not going to mention the guy's name, or where I'm at in the neighborhood, but in this house, I found out was more of an abusive sort, and what happened was some of the feelings that started to get kicked up as my devices were here and that the solstice was coming up. Even though the solstice and the mind control stuff was about, there was also the residual on the land that this guy imprinted here. And I got to thinking what was on the land before that caused him to be this way too. And I have found some things, not big ones, just residual from previous eras, even Paleolithic type of energies, which you can't easily clear. But what happened was I started feeling the same feelings this guy was emanating, and I started acting weird. This wasn't mean that he was dead and he was a ghost. He left such a strong imprint on the property that it became its own haunting. And people can also form their own poltergeists out of hidden abilities or hidden anything. A perfect example is The Secrets of Dumbledore with the character of Credence, where he has this hidden, like Phoenix, or this Phoenix that tries to fly around him. He has this hidden shadow ability that he never let out, or hidden pain that he projects out. But you can also create a poltergeist through an incantation as like a guard, or you hear about those robotic guards in the past that you heard aliens construct, like the Isle of Crete has Talos, Northern mythology for Vanheim has Njord, the robotic guard. But think of an etheric version of that where somebody creates something. Now think of something like that a group would generate from, or from energies that had just built up. That is a being called an egregore that forms out of the repressed garbage of humans, and it takes on a life of its own as well. Imprints on a land are the starts or the seeds of what an egregore can become. And I found that out, that concept is a very real one. And if you get an egregore monster started, I call them entanglement monsters too, very dangerous thing to have happen after a while. They're a pain in the ass to clear, but I always nip these residuals in the butt when I find them, because those are like these seeds of like an egregore or a major poltergeist type of buildup after a while. So I try to nip that in the ass when I see it. But it's not easy with some people. He had such a presence here that some people just leave their mark in history. And no matter how much that history changes to make them look more favorable, like say historical figures, you see their true self in the Earth Akejik, the benevolent Earth Akejik, and it pops up over and over again. Especially if a lie is being told about somebody, or if they're hiding something, it'll regurgitate out, and you'll see what their true presence is. Like the source field just records it. And is AI responsible for some? Yes, but then there's also a natural energy that tends to reverb, because the Earth is nothing but high energy fields, magnetic fields, and portals, and vortex, and gateways. So, and dimensional fields, and intersection.
If we ain't living in the most chaotic time of history, I don't know what we are.
Most definitely. I know I've been going on and on and on, and you had other stuff to say, but it was like,
oh no, very interesting. That Nag's head was something that who would have thought?
Yeah, Nag's head. It's peaceful energy. If you go to the Outer Banks, except that there's like a bajillion people out there. Some are kind of avoid it unless you're into being shoulder to shoulder like this with people, or not being able to find a parking space or a restaurant space. Go about maybe 3 p.m. You'll avoid the dinner crowd and the lunch crowd, and you'll be fine for eating food and stuff out there. We found that about 3 in the afternoon, but with we would go in the fall and in the winter times to look for shells and everything, because there was nobody around. And that's when we were seeing all this. Yeah, we were seeing all that around that time when it was more peaceful. When there's a lot of people, you tend not to see it as much. But you do when of course, you're alone and you're looking around and you see like flames coming out of the water. It's like, and you never filmed it. It's like, that
it always happens. It always happens like that 90% of the time.
Yeah, it's the stories that aren't being told are what I'm interested in, because like some Joe Blow goes walking down the beach, sees this happen, and never talks about it, and that always gets me. And that's saved in that record too. I had this distinct feeling others had seen these things, and they just weren't talking about it because they couldn't process it. And just like a lot of people weren't reporting in Prescott before we left, we were seeing UFO activity about a year prior to us, or a year or so prior to us leaving, and or to us moving to our Prescott Valley house. And I look up at night, I'm outside with Sammy, and I see these. Also, something told me to look up, and I looked up, and I saw these little string of lights in the sky in a row, and they were going shooting in a row, and there was a brighter one going the opposite direction. And all I heard in my head was, "Do not be afraid. We are your friends and allies." And I heard that in my head. They were on a telepathic bandwidth. Whoever that was projecting outward. And granted, this could be part of the government's disclosure plan of saying, "Oh, we want to present a certain type of alien to the public," sort of thing too. But I didn't detect that it was deceptive or evil. So,
and see, that's where I believe too. With all these UFO reports, it's almost, or UFO sightings, not just reports. For me, I know that. Call it synchronicity. We did our episode over synchronicity. Call it, I think it was just meant to be like that, but it's almost like a form of telepathy. About 3 of the 6 UFO sightings I've had, just something told me to look up right then and there to see it, just whatever the hell that is. It just told me to look right there. But not only that, you had your whole day up to that point, you had to do everything that you were doing to put yourself in that exact position to witness it. Yeah, so it's almost, I don't know if I believe in coincidences. I almost believe, in synchronicity, with the bad and the good, that goes on in your life, I guess.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Like Sammy, why did he have to go out at the exact moment too? And why also then was I compelled to look up? The person that filmed a crop circle being formed one time, the skeptics thought he planned it because he aimed the camera right at the spot. He goes, "No, I was intuitively told in my head, point it here." And many skeptics don't believe that. Just like on Hartley Street, one of the most haunted houses that we've ever been in, and I've had to get rid of objects we've had from that house too, here, even now. But I had this compulsion to turn my head and look left, and I saw this white figure all of a sudden flash into my visual perception, looking over there. It was a telepathic link to get me to look left. It's not all about words. It's more like a feeling. You had to look. And or had to look down, or had to look at something. And that's how that works. It's more intuitive.
I always had, the one spot that we did together was actually in Lincoln as well. That Lake Street Lake, it just felt eerie. I
Hmm.
mean, it just felt, I don't know, just something wasn't right about that area. Uh,
Yeah, the UFO that was caught then was very fascinating, and I've seen synchronicities about this since then, folks. So we went to Lake Street Lake, and the recording is still on the YouTube. What happened is also on the Facebook. I have the pictures of this UFO. I had a feeling. I heard in my head, take a picture of the plane twice that I was photographing. I flipped two times, and I do this all the time now. I make it a common practice to go two, three, four, like type shots, and you always seem to get something. One, the first shot, nothing. Second shot, orbital,
yep.
honeycomb shaped UFO that was there,
Just
and
zooming
it
across. Yeah.
zooming across. And what's a synchronicity? We saw this not too long ago, and this show's been out since the 2000s, but they showed it was an episode of Star Trek Enterprise, the season finale of the very first season of it, Shockwave Part 1 and 2. They showed that these aliens that were trying to set up the Enterprise for causing an explosion in a mining colony on a shuttle from their shuttlecraft engines. They showed these hexagonal or these honeycomb shaped orbs that would attach to the ships and the sabotage the engines and made it so that it made it look like they did something wrong, or that
Hmm.
the pilot, it was pilot error or something like that. And it showed the orbs in a certain frequency flying alongside the Enterprise as they were trying to get away from this area where they were trying to figure out something out. You see several of them flying alongside, and I saw that one. This is the same thing they're depicting. These guys are causing. I get the feeling that these guys are causing problems with the aircraft, or sabotaging, or taking DNA from people, or changing the mechanics in flight. And that was the feeling I got. I can't prove that, mind you, but that's the intuitive feeling I got from that. But it was an interesting synchronicity. You and I had just been talking privately on the phone about that incident, and then we saw the Star Trek Enterprise episode with that in it. And I thought that was interesting. That like they were
Hmm.
showing blow by blow what these orbs did, and these beings inside did. And who's piloting these spaceships in the storyline? Reptilians. So uh, the Suliban shapeshifting reptilians that are in it, and I find that very fascinating. But no pun intended, Star Trek was. Uh, but yeah, there's been a lot of synchronicities with Trek lately. A lot of synchronicities to a lot of stuff going on. That and Marvel lately. So I won't go into that. That would be a show in and of itself, synchronicities
Yeah.
through the media type of thing. But it would be like we'd have like a week long series of episodes, and we still wouldn't get it done. So
Yeah. Run the
but
gambit.
yeah, oh yeah, we would go through every variation, everything like that if we did a show like that. I mean, we could do it and give great examples for it, but it would take a minute to culminate like the top three or the top four of them. But
Go into detail too. Yeah, there's just so much.
yeah, there's a ton. It's saturated. It's oversaturated in some areas. Uh, but did you have anything else to
I,
add,
w-
Robert?
I was
Any
just going to
show?
say, well, why don't let's hop back on a plane. Let's go back to the Midwest and
Okay.
let's go check into a hotel in Broken Bow. I know that you've heard of this one, probably. The Haunted Arrow Historic Hotel and Pub in Broken Bow. This historic hotel was built in 1928 by a group of private citizens to service the needs of the railroad. It replaced the old commercial hotel and was the first three-story building in Broken Bow. The street level consisted of a lobby, restaurant, beauty saloon, barber shop, ladies' dress shop, and a ballroom. The second and third floors held 52 sleeping rooms with public baths at the end of the halls. In 1984, after years of disrepair, Ray Brown, who had been a boy at the time the hotel was erected, had a vision of renovating the structure to extend its future. And as we know, during renovations, that brings out activity. Hey, we
Almost
don't like
definitely.
this. Bring it back the old way and we'll calm down. uh, However, his idea did not prove successful. The investors decided to return the business back to a hotel, with the apartments becoming suites. Barbershop became a small meeting room. The dress shop was converted into a convention room, and the beauty salon became a small bar. The beauty saloon was then moved into a portion of the old ballroom where it still remains today. The hauntings. There have been many strange reports of paranormal activity in the hotel, which is still in operation. One of the former owners is said to have died in the hotel. and some individuals have seen his apparition traveling the stairs to the kitchen. Unexplained noises have been reported by staff and guests. Much of walking around in the building occurs after closing hours, but upon investigating have found no one there. Apparitions of a ghostly gray-haired man, a red-haired woman, and a mysterious man who stays in the cigar room have all been reported by numerous guests and staff members. The former owner, who passed away in the hotel, has been seen walking up and down the stairs to the kitchen. Furniture moves around by itself, and guests and staff have reported hearing strange booms late at night when there is no one around. Another reported apparition is a red-haired woman who has been seen by guests and staff in an upstairs hallway. Rumors have it that she was a witch that was murdered and buried in a nearby cemetery. This gorgeous hotel is a must-visit, and I've actually driven through Broken Bow, probably 100 times in my life, and I never have been in here. But I would love to, obviously it's a pub. At the very least, I would like to stop and, just grab something to eat sometime and just walk around and check it out and get the vibe and feel and see, what you can intuitively feel that might be there. But this was it comes from, however you pronounce that name, for the website okosaz.com. And but yeah, it's a very interesting place. It's just one of the areas that you drive by and you can tell that you'll go back in time when you go in there, I guess.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you said Broken Bow, because that's also a Star Trek synchronicity as well. Enterprise. I was just talking about that. That's the
really?
first episode. That's the pilot episode of Star Trek Enterprise, and the other one was the last 2 episodes of that same season that I just mentioned. So I thought that's interesting. And residuals, though, oh yeah, you can get residuals of people going through their routine and everything. That'd be an interesting place to check out. And also this house, I forgot to mention, my mother and Laverne and I, in the middle of the night, heard this crash in the house, like a china cabinet being pushed over or something like that. I looked around and went, oh crap, did something break in my workshop? I'm like, I went out there expecting to see some crap all over the place and everything. Nothing. And what we were hearing was something that was so impactful in the etheric that it spread the sound through time like that, and in the etheric or in the imprint. That's how strong some of those imprints are. We saw what the owner had done. He lost his temper and threw like a tipped over a china cabinet or something like that, and and we heard it loud and clear. We thought there was this big crash, but we were hearing the past is what we were hearing. And that's where people have to be careful, keep certain things in check, keep certain, I don't want to say always keep thoughts in check, because you have to be who you are, but it's still, you have to make sure the ether isn't disrupted like that. But in a place like that hotel, of course there would be sorrow imprinted there if somebody had a business deal gone awry. Of course they would be in a despondent mindset, and could have even incurred some of the activity renovating something, like we said. Oh God, if you do that, you change one little thing, you could disrupt it. There are ghosts around, or there's residual around, and you change the configuration, you kick up a lot of that. And we have, even here, moving stuff around on this property, it's done it too. We spotted that Granville before we left. New houses were being constructed. It was wreaking holy hell on the ethers there in Prescott Valley. So it happens everywhere. It's a normal thing that happens. Like in Sixth Sense, when Bruce Willis's character, when he can't get back down to his workshop, there's a bench in the way of the door that wasn't there before. And also there was a red cloth or something in the way. He couldn't cross it because this not only is red a protective color and black, I put red scarves and everything. You can't see it on the doorknob, but the reverse side of this door has a red scarf on it, or a red handkerchief. It's a protective measure. And also red flags, Tibetan flags, the multicolors do it. But at the same time, in that scene, the configuration of the house had changed. So he couldn't navigate it the same way. And he didn't see why, because he didn't know he was dead in the movie until the very end. So it's very interesting how when something slightly changes, it's just like in an episode of Earth Final Conflict where somebody invents the transporter, like on Star Trek, and somebody moved an object in the person's workshop. He beamed in and he got fused with a shelf in his workshop and died. So it was like, it's kind of like that, where if something changes, his computer didn't recognize the things that weren't supposed to be, that the cops had moved in his room. It's kind of similar for a ghost. If something moves, they're not recognizing a configuration, that their personal energy of a particular time frame that they were in doesn't recognize a change happening later with its frequency value versus their own. And that can actually happen, or shrouded from other time frames. They still think it's their own. In some cases, they don't know they died and they've shift, within their own frequency
Hmm.
bubble or shroud. And I've lifted shrouds before for ghosts that were around and even Preolithic time frame. The one example before I go into the channeling is at Hartley when we had oh god, what was it? There was a caveman energy that was there. We thought was very weird, and it was Preolithic feeling, and I kept seeing this weird Neanderthal looking guy walking around. I'm going, okay, what's this? And in Lincoln, there, if you go to Morrill Hall, and for the university, there is a case called the Nebraska Man, and he is a caveman
Hmm.
type that they looked at his DNA, and they saw that he had pig DNA as well as human, which shows there was alien experimentation going on with all these animal hybridic type things
Not
going on.
not to throw one in there, but would that be the missing links, missing wink?
Or missing sausage links, as this case may be. So, yeah, Isaac found that one funny. Found them both funny, but this is what I was seeing. Him and beings from that time frame. I saw he looked a little strange. It had like pig-like features and everything,
Hmm.
and I didn't know about the pig DNA that was found. And I read that shortly after as a synchronicity. So, what happened was I was seeing that and the other local ghosts from all different time frames that were there, but they couldn't see each other. So I just kind of put it out that the shroud was lifted so they could see each other, like from Native American to modern to caveman to all of it. And eventually I moved the whole group on, but they couldn't see each other. And went to a spot in Illinois called Bachelor's Grove, a very haunted cemetery out there. Got an EVP of a
I,
woman.
I wonder if I got any family buried out there.
Oh, in
But
Bachelor's Grove.
yeah.
Oh, that's a mob spot. That's where Al Capone did a lot of his stuff out there. But what happened this is in Illinois, and what happened was this woman in the EVP was looking for her baby, but her grave was right next to the baby's grave. And when I reunited them in the ghost form, they were able to move on to spirit together. And there was also in Forest Home Cemetery in the Chicago area, whereas there was a woman looking for a ghost named Thomas, and Thomas's grave was not maybe 3-4 graves away from hers, and it was the person she was looking for. When I brought them together, they were able to move on. An example of this is in the game Skyrim, where you have a woman ghost who wants your help to locate her husband, and you find out he died in battle ages ago, and she died in the same area. His ghost, when you find him, battle for him has not happened yet, and he didn't know he had died. But then you tell him, like, his wife's looking for him, and you bring him over to her, and he doesn't recognize the battle happened or that he had died at all. But then she recognizes he died, and that she had died. So they all move on together. So when you clear the history up there, when you start bringing it out in the open, when two or more people recognize a history, a ghost can move on. And I've noticed, ghosts are mainly formed from lies, injustices, and unfinished business. And when you start recognizing this, it starts to change the ether as well. One more thing before I move on, and also I went to a place called the Irish Legend, and it's a restaurant that was Al Capone's hideout. And I got on EVP a ghost that called himself Vincent, and Vincent, I found out was also named Vincenza, and his mother called him Vincent. And I heard him talk telepathically to me later on as well, where I felt a gun barrel being put in my back, a little knuckle gun, and I found out his favorite weapon was a knuckle gun, and he
Hmm.
was Al Capone's right hand man, his main guy, his main hitman, was Vincenza. And so I picked up on Vincenza before I did Al Capone. And I picked up a little bit on Al Capone, but not as much as Vincenza was. And he was the main one. Al Capone was there too. He was kind of stuck in that place, but so was Vincenza. And I found that very fascinating. I didn't even know the names of half of these people, and that's what was coming up in the EVP and in me doing my thing. But So I was able to synchronize that as time went on. I know I veered, but this was Bachelor's Grove was a big place where Al Capone used to dump his bodies out in the woods, and it was in the middle of nowhere in his time. So now it's surrounded by city and neighborhoods and everything, but it's one of the most haunted places in the country. I highly recommend going there if you're wanting to see something because it is immensely haunted.
There's a page I follow, just Bachelor's Grove Cemetery on Facebook, and they dive into a lot of, people who do research there. There was this one fellow, I haven't seen him for a while, but he would almost go there every day. It seemed like just to hang out and, explore in and around the area and dive on into some of the stories and legends and myths and ghost stories and things of that nature. But it's very a hotbed activity, but I know that there's a lot of people screwing around and vandalizing and doing stuff like that too, because I think that's part of the reason he was hanging out there, was trying to stop people from mischief.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of mischief and a lot of black magic going on too there. My father, a friend Dave Pappas, who's also a stage member as well in Montana now, but my father and I went to Bachelor's Grove and caught this. We called her the Witch of Bachelor's Grove, but her and her friend were there. He was the lookout, like kind of mischievously looking out over, looking for people to come by, and they were just kind of standing around. When we came in there, they were very irked, like we had interrupted something. What the girl was doing a ritual, like I don't want to say pagan ritual. It was more satanic than anything else. It wasn't positive. What she was trying to do was trying to conjure some of the energies that were on some of the remains. Some of the dark magicians that are out there will pull energy off of human remains and use it to create energetic familiar types and poltergeist-ish type of things, or even like an egregore type of situation. But pull it off, because human remains hold this curse. What I hear is like an ancient curse on human remains. This is why cremation is good. Whereas Enlil in the mythology cursed human remains, and that the human soul will be bound to the skeletal form because of the moisture in the bones and the water in the bones. This is an old curse that is from antiquity. So what happens is cremation gets rid of the curse. That's why it's better. But with this is what this girl was trying to do. And I stopped her from doing it when I was there. I was like, no, you're not. And we managed to get the two out of there before they could do any black magic. But that's the ritual they were trying to perform there, was that. And it's not a well-known one. The curse is not that well-known either. But this is what they were trying to exploit. And so if I were there now, I'd be putting my shungite powders and stuff all over the place out there now. I'd be there everywhere. They wouldn't be able to do any of the rituals with some of the other stuff permanently there. Like the Eldscrape powder I make for land clearings and stuff. They wouldn't. That has shungite in it and everything, and amber, frankincense, myrrh, all that stuff in it. They're not going to be able to fight that after a while with black magic. But I think we're at the point we can do the channeling, unless you have any other stories.
That sounds good. I think we covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time. So if you want to channel on through, let's go with it.
Yeah, alrighty. Give me a second here. Oh.
Good idea.
Okay. Yeah. Taste buds feel weird, and also the if you get the dry throat, if you get the cotton mouth, that usually means an energy drain as well, or energy buildup.
I got that going on right now, actually.
Oh, it's probably because of all we're stirring up some energies here, but I know Isaac want to be the one to come in today. I know I've
been going like this about every 5 minutes.
Yeah, me too. Now, when I got COVID that time, I noticed my taste buds changed too. But this was also that kind of denoted energy drain too. So ginger chews will help that afterwards. We use ginger, and that seems to cut that from happening. If you get these, you can get them online. There's different variations of them. If I find out the brand, I can put it as a hashtag in the description. But I use it like when I thought I was getting sick again when we were on vacation. I went out by the ocean, used ginger chews all the time, and it kicked it. So, and the salt air of the ocean, the ions fixed it. That's why they didn't want people on the beaches during the whole COVID lockdown fiasco, because that would have fixed it like that. So immediately the salt air, and also ginger, and basically ginger kicks the fever response in immediately and burns the sickness out. So So that's why they didn't want people going outside near the ocean. They didn't want people going and buying some of these home remedies and stuff like that. They wanted people right on the vax immediately. Boom, boom, boom. So yeah.
It's kind of funny
So
that you mentioned that. I don't know if you remember this, but before you moved to Prescott for the first time, remember you gave me a bunch of that cinchona bark and ginger powder. I still got like I would say half of the cinchona powder left, just because I only put like a little pinch in like a
you
smoothie or
can't do too
something.
much or you go into seizure fits practically. So it's like,
Yeah, so I only put like a little pinch in, but the ginger I just finished off about, I don't know, 6 months ago, I'd say. Uh,
cacao works really well in that area too. Cacao that you gave me, I tried some of that, some of the stuff you gave me, and that helped as well. So,
One of
uh,
my faves.
and let's see. Okay, Isaac, yes, yes, I know. So let's see. Okay, yeah. Now he goes through a kind of a communication arc outside with a skull in it with two copper pipes, and it's the Tower Buster formula. But I have one that he arcs through, and here is this guy right here.
Cool.
Yeah, with a shungite top on
Looks
it.
powerful.
Yeah, and this is red jasper, copper, and there's amber, frankincense, and myrrh in this one too, and shungite. So, uh, uh, and let's see, turquoise is the other guy here. So, I made these a while back, but I don't have the mold for that one anymore. So let's see. All right, Isaac. Yes, I'll shut up so you can come in. All right. All right. Okay, through the crystal, Isaac. I can feel him running his fingers on my brain surface here. So it's like, oh, ooh. Yes, indeed. This is actually very interesting. Some of these local legends. You will start to see more of this activity as time goes on, even now, from even the last time you did one of these conspiracy sector episodes. There has been an uptick in paranormal activity all across the board. They have also noticed from the moving from Arizona to here, there is a decrease in some types of activity and an increase of others. Things can follow you through generations as well. And even if you take certain objects with you across country, like he noticed, there was he calls it the creepy ghost. He's not normally creeped out by certain activity, but there was a certain potent ghost that had mutated into an elasmomorphic type of form. This is one that he spotted in that was trapped in the workshop not too long ago. This was more of a dangerous type that could actually harm people if he was able to not be stuck in the workshop where he had trapped him in with using some of his pieces. But the activity that is being kicked up is by your Schumann resonance, or what people perceive to be as that. It is really the kick up of the mind control and the kick up of artificially generated deconstructing and reconstructing entities, arm wrestling that of the Earth Mother herself. And it is actually starting to kick up a butterfly effect all across the planet's surface and underneath and in different dimensions, very much like your nuclear blasts stretched into different dimensions. This particular mind control activity in the 5G network also stretches into different dimensional states and vibrational frequency values. This is also kicking up activity from Preolithic times and back and beyond, and it is being touted as natural Earth changes. Even though there are a variant of Pandora's boxes being open that would have eventually themselves open, it is now hyper accelerating into this new age. Currently, you'll be seeing more and more reports of not only UFOs and dimensional crafts, but also ghost and historical reports as time goes on as well. So I can go into questions if you like.
Yes, if people are reporting activity, if they start noticing activity in their homes or wherever they're at, especially in their homes, number one, what can they do if it's bad to neglect, that type of energy away from their homes?
It's interesting. Some people are compelled never to do anything or think they have no hope or no power to do anything about it, even though him and his mother had a hard time removing this particular obstinate bastard that was in their home. It was actually able to be done, and you don't need hyper-powered abilities like they do. Within your home, if you have a particular activity, If it is more of just a benevolence trying to get your attention per se, or if it's a ghost that suffered an injustice, doing the historical research with two or more people finding out the truth behind a particular incident is a very quick way of expunging the behavior and then expunging the activity. Now, if it's something that is really, really deep set, of course, you can get out of there, but it's also altered the fundamental state of the energetics on the property, very much like if you would renovate. It alters the fundamental imprint. You can use salts. You can use, he uses black witches salts. You can use sages. You can use rosemary. You can use palo santos. He likes to use powders, like his amber, frankincense, and myrrhs and shungite. Beautiful, beautiful usage of it. Magnetite is another one because of the magnetic nature of it. Different, even bringing in like sacred earth from a different place, like he does with the Sedona dirt, and transplants it to a different area. This changes the energetics fundamentally and will then release at least half to three-fourths of the original activity, because it fundamentally changes the fingerprint that was once there. You're taking one fingerprint of Earth and putting it in another fingerprint of Earth, and a different age, a different frequency value, a different time. And by doing this, you can kick up the activity where some of these things cannot stay, or at least they are noticed to where someone could get rid of them. Or if you found someone with an even greater skill like himself to get rid of it. Yes, I'm not saying he is all about this. I'm saying somebody with their intention could push this out. He likes to visualize the demon's head cut off and whatnot. And that's true. You can visualize this in your mind's eye. Whatever you are seeing in your head this being to be is more than likely what it is, as scary as it is. They're trying to project at you, very much like in your Shazam Fury of the Gods, where the dragon project the fear at people. These demons like to do the same to make people think they're overpowering and all-encompassing and omnipotent. No, they're a mosquito. You can swat them. These creatures are nothing, and they can be driven out by even the most uninformed person.
So the exact opposite now, if people are interested in pursuing the paranormal, what's some tips and tricks that they can do to hone in on a hot spot that they might be researching or that they're interested in?
It's more about intuition. If it's one that you are drawn to, there's two reasons. Intuition, is or an affinity for the paranormal research of a place, or you're being roped to a place so that something can follow you home. It's a telepathic link. You must distinguish between the two. But if you wish to go, regardless of whether it's a roping or an affinity, the trick of this is not to allow things to come home with you. If you want to find certain hotspots and research this, what you can do is also look at all the mean average of reports that are in an area as to what type of activity is there. Then you will know how to clear the place or what type of activity you are filming for. For an example, say if a haunted cemetery was known for satanic sacrificial or known for rituals or something like that, you would know then to research what types of items to bring with to be trigger objects for said activity. I do not always recommend provocation. Of course, it can be disrespectful, but if you're trying to clear it and you want to bring something out in the open, that is also a good method, but also putting trigger objects out that mimic a particular ritual. Now, the reason I only recommend this for experienced people, but also if you're a novice doing this, don't always do this. The reason being is you don't want to mimic a ritual and then bring the being out. This is like when they mimic rituals that are in films and then some real paranormal activity happens. The idea is to do the reverse and ward against said things. Now, if you're trying desperately to get evidence, it is always best to follow safety protocols, wear certain oils that repel certain demonic forces, visualize an armor around you, wear stones like he does on the wrists, things of that nature. If you're really wanting to get activity, you can combine safety and the scientific method of research all in one role. So a lot of people do not take the safety precautions because they do not believe there is a danger, and that is wrong. In some of these situations where you are not prepared, it's like in a video game with a level 1 going against a level 50. Now, if you've gained experience uh, and you feel that you're at a particular stage, it may be a fork and light socket moment for you, but in the very same ether or tone, you can go into these situations with a confidence that you will not only get something, but that you will also be safe leaving that and confine it to like almost like a hermetic seal to the property by basically saying nothing that is for my not for my highest good will follow me out of this property and into my car or into my house. He found this out after many years of doing this. But if you want a head start in this area and doing it right, that is the way to do it.
Very good. Uh, so what are some other tips and tricks during investigating? What do you like, especially shutting down an investigation, and people that are playing with Ouija boards and things like that? Can you give us some information on what the proper ways of starting and shutting down an investigation is if people are interested in that?
Of course, you have to make a ritual out of it. I know the science types and the science geekoids and the skeptical geekoids like to not believe certain things, but also, even if you don't believe it, adhering to a certain pattern of doing things, such as like when you arrive, say the circle is open to true benevolent research and true benevolent ghosts and true benevolent whatever the entities are there, from elementals to whomever ETs, any of them, opening the circle to not having your people harmed. Now, when it comes to the equipment always gets taxed. This happens every single time, and you may have to switch out your equipment every quarter or so. The cameras, all of it, it gets saturated. It's a natural thing that happens because they're made with earth elements, and they're also made to attract ghosts. Even home security systems, like he quickly found out here in this house, attract paranormal activity after a while, especially if you're in that level of research. When you are completed with that research, it is important to close the circle, declare it closed as you're breaking down, as you're leaving, then saying to yourself or saying aloud that nothing that is not for my highest good can follow me home or haunt my team members or family members. When you declare it closed, then you're golden at that point. Now, in home research, in someone's home, it is important not to linger with the equipment for more than a few minutes, like the ghost box, for instance. You make the activity worse. You stir it up very much like a renovation would. It's the same as taking a dump in someone's living room and throwing their furniture around and saying that you're done. No, you have to clear. You have to have someone come in as you are performing your scientific tasks. Have someone like himself in there as a team member, as an equal, talking to whoever is there, and you will get the proof that you want if you're not so anal about separating both sides. He likes to say. Then you keep the sense of peace in the person's home. You can't just go and record things and leave. You have to have an etiquette in the ether. You have to have a respectfulness, but you also have an opening of the circle and a closing of the circle. And then not only are your team members safe, but so is the homeowners as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks for tuning in. I think that'll give people a good in-depth view if they're interested in finding a location, then be investigating and see how to do it proper. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope that gives the viewers an in-depth view of what they might want or need to do if they're interested in something along that line.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you very much, everyone. I always enjoy these particular broadcasts. So blessings to you all, and bye-bye.
Very good.
Yeah, he makes the channeling makes this eye water a lot anymore. The tear duct gets like severely like open and it starts to like drip. So that seems to happen anymore. But yeah, he's right about the opening and the closing of the circle. I think the paranormal investigation type of research has to alter slightly to not be so separate between the mediumships and the skeptical side. I think they both have to work together in equal tandem.
Mm-hmm.
Just they're both crew members of the same team. You need both, because if you have one that is ungrounded and is over here picking up on everything, sometimes the skeptical side likes to say they are just yelling stuff out when they're not. But then you have this person that grounds the skeptic and basically says, okay, you do your thing, I'll do mine, and we culminate our data afterwards. and that should be a natural part of the team operation. And demonologists and all of them tend to come in afterwards and help clear the place and research it in their own way. And one tends to precede the other. But the skeptics always seem to come first, and I think that's wrong. I think they should operate in tandem, like a tandem bicycle. I think that would yield more results. Like Tesla was said, if the scientific field would go in the areas of mysticism, magic, and frequency, they would find out more in few minutes than they would in a year or even decades. So I think if, paranormal research would evolve if the two sides weren't so separate, like a yin yang. They could come together. So the mystical and the scientific, I think, are one. So it's just an advanced form of science. You have magic on this side, like advanced technology that's misinterpreted as magic, like Arthur C. Clarke said. The significantly advanced technology is misinterpreted as magic or seen as magic. So I think that, and also ufology, UFO research, it should all be one topic, one thing. I feel, because it is one thing. You might not be dealing with the history of ghosts there. You might be dealing with Paleolithic time, imprints, elementals, aliens, UFOs, even little spaceships, orbs, portals, vortexes. You could be dealing with time fractures, any of them. So
there's so much.
Now, any of these phenomena, and you need a response team in this area. It's very crucial now more than ever that there are response teams for this type of thing. Like you have EMT or paramedic or fireman or police officer, medical. Why not a paranormal research type of thing? Hitler had his own paranormal research team, believe it or not. During the Second World War, they were going around looking for this phenomenon as a response team, but also to gather information because they wanted to conquer other dimensions too. That's how arrogant that man was. But it was an evil they were. But on the flip side of it, I saw a response team on a show that was on, I can't remember if it was on Travel or something like that, where a host named Don Wildman went over to Bulgaria and found this response team going and looking for people that were possessed. They called them all vampires or vampiric entities there, but they were going to haunted sites, clearing them and doing things and making sure that somebody that lived nearby wasn't affected by a hotspot. And they were going and closing the circle for that hotspot. They were doing it all correct, like what we said. So that's what we need over here. I looked at it one day. I said, we're in the wrong country, apparently. But I saw that. I was like, oh, these are trench workers. So they call them trench workers. There, it's more of it's essentially a response team, kind of like a military unit or a police unit or like an Avengers type of scenario or Justice League type of thing. Not quite that ostentatious, but you get the idea. But it's but yeah, it's been interesting, and also the activity is even though it's becoming enormous, but people cannot. This is if I could give any advice, don't think that something is so severe from your perspective that you turn it into a bigger emergency than it currently is. Like a woman called me and said they had a shadow in their house and they thought it was a paranormal emergency or a psychic emergency, when in fact it was an elemental that actually was there long before they were. And that's what I was able to see. It's not an emergency. I can't remove this being because he was there long before you. If he's causing problems, I'll get him to stop. But this is where this was at. A real emergency would be like a reptilian is ripping your door down, sort of thing. That's an emergency. So you gotta gauge it. Even though you may not be experienced in one area, it's good to not be afraid of it. But also, it's good to be excited about this. It's good to have fun with, but at the same time, be smart. Don't be so excited about it that you don't take safety precautions. Just begin with. And I learned that too, big time.
Very good information. I suppose we should probably wrap it up. I hope everybody, and speaking of safety, has a good, safe Independence Day that's coming up here. And don't be blowing your hand off or shooting your eye out or anything along that line. If you do go looking for the weird and strange, remember all these tips and tricks. But until next time, I hope everybody stays healthy, and we will catch you on the flip side.
Yes, and you are now exiting the conspiracy sector. Bye-bye, everybody.
Adios.